So I really do want to ask about privatization and school choice because these are very divisive issues. And, Betsy DeVos, the former Secretary of Education under Trump, was hugely critical of public education, big proponent of school choice. And post-pandemic, it is true that public education enrollment has taken a big nosedive, big concern. So, how do you see either candidate viewing the role of supporting public education in a new administration? Do you think either of them have made either a clear or defensible case for more parental choice, charter schools, and voucher plans? And does that worry you? I mean, Jonathan, I know you have talked a lot about this in your book, and you've said that a fully marketized system of schooling means that we've largely given up on the role of schools in supporting a healthy democracy, economy, and society. Ian, you've been a big fan of choice, running public charter schools, activating families. How do you all see this playing out among the candidates and in whoever might be elected next? Who would like to take a swing at that first?
Jonathan, you want to start?
How about the affirmative, Ian?
Okay.
How about the affirmative first, sir?
Okay. Again, words like privatization, sometimes, you hear these words like, gosh, am I for privatization? That sounds really bad. And the thing is, what I'm for is giving a parent the opportunity to give their kid a shot, right? So back to Soundview. If you're in that school district where only 7% of kids graduate from high school ready for college, you're a 22-year-old mom. Let's say you had a kid at 17. Whatever decisions you made in your life, you want something better for your kid. Should that parent have the same kinds of opportunities that I, as a parent, have, or you have, Jonathan, or you, Liz? And should the government be assisting in creating more options? I think so. So the way to do that, in my view, is to push as much power into the hands of parents as possible. So across the country, certainly since COVID, 30 plus states are creating more mechanisms, whether it be voucher programs, education savings accounts. I mean, charter schools have faced far more opposition, so they're not as much of a go-to strategy anymore, although there's still, I think, 3 to 4 million kids in charter schools across the country. I think that's healthy because it's from the perspective of parents, primarily low-income parents who are trapped. And I hate the language of failing schools, and because that's the kind of language that just puts us all at odds with each other. But but the reality is there are kids trapped in those school systems, and they don't have the time to suddenly for the system to change. So I often say to people who are, what would you say to that 22-year-old mom who wants to put her kid in kindergarten? What would you say to her if the only choice that she has is a school in which likely only 7% of kids will graduate from high school ready for college?
Jonathan?
I started my career at a school that had a whole private dimension and yet was publicly supported. I was New York City's charter school authorizer and authorized charter schools. I served on the board of Dream Charter Schools, one of the more successful networks in the city, if not the country. There is no argument with Ian or anybody about consigning a human being to a life where they cannot fully flourish, right? Full stop. Any system arrangement that does that is contrary to a democracy where we're trying to help people live flourishing lives as they define it. Back to the theme of our webinar, what could we expect from a Harris administration? We know what the Democratic Party platform reads. I think I've got it here, which is opposition to private school choice and holding charter schools to the same standards as district schools.
Because Trump was in office with Betsy DeVos, my sense would be that whether or not they eliminate the Federal Department of Education, I mean, I think it's unlikely that they'll get rid of the entire department. However, my sense is they're envisioning completely rejiggering how the department would change in terms of creating incentives for states to create more opportunities. So, for example, let's say they said, we're going to create block grants, or actually during the Obama administration, the Race to the Top competition, which I think had hugely positive impact. Certainly in New York State, I think we won a $700 million competition where the federal government said, look, you've got to create more high quality schools, that you've got to hit these academic benchmarks. And guess what? That had the intended effect of creating more, education entrepreneurs like me to say, wow, let's
Yeah.
create more public charter schools. So I think there are ways for the federal government to say, here are the kinds of things that we would reward states for doing. And typically, I think the Trump administration would want those to be more opportunities for parents to have more choice.
Yeah.
Now, you may not like this. That would include private school choice. It would include religious school choice, right? This makes people very uncomfortable. Although sometimes when you step back, you actually see that the United States is actually the outlier here. Many other states have pluralistic school systems. Ashley Berner has a great book on this topic where government-funded schools include in quote unquote private schools, religious schools, traditional public schools. And so there is a larger and larger movement for states to give public dollars to parents who want to be able to access that kind of schooling too. So that's what I would envision the Trump administration would probably use the Federal Department of Education for.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on a few of those points because I think they are bright lines between the two candidates and the nation's politics, even if they may not be bright lines where Ian and I, reasonable minds, might find some common ground. My intel suggests that some of the most hostile opponents of charter schooling, I won't name names, but there is a national organization that advocated loudly for defunding the charter schools program at the beginning of the Biden administration.
Yes.
That they are coming to terms with the fact
you should explain to the audience what is that CSP program?
Well, sure. Charter schools program is largely funds facilities and real estate for charter schools, given that district schools have bonding authority to build their buildings. Many charters don't have that bonding authority. So this is a way to put a roof over a child in a tax-funded school. Seems reasonable enough. It has been opposed by charter advocates for many years. Biden made some noises about doing something to it. And charter advocates in Democratic states like New Jersey, Cory Booker, and others said, knock it off. My intel suggests that the Democrats are coming to terms with the fact that the charter sector is here to stay, 3 million students and growing, a well-organized lobby, and to look at a charter reform agenda instead of an anti-reform agenda. Now, what's a charter reform agenda? Liz, if you'll let me get esoteric for 30 seconds, I promise just 30 seconds, 30 seconds. I'm with you, Ian. Privatization, what does that mean, right? Private from what? What's public? What makes anything public? And policymakers and politicians have been living forever in a mindset that there's government and proprietary and charitable in the middle. And movement away from government is privatization. Well, the charter sector turned that question on its head in a really healthy way. What I have written about and done, and I would encourage the Democratic Party looking for a reform agenda to think about, is what are the characteristics of schooling that make something more public and less private? Are we preparing citizens, good neighbors, workers, stewards of the planet, the big public goods that we all share, and not excluding? Exclusion, by definition, makes something more private and more public.
Well, you both...
If there are expectations, regulations, laws that expect those things of schools, then you could see district, charter, proprietary being more publicly purposed than what they may be today.